Hello everyone. My name is Davis. I am from Cardiovisual. We are a patient education platform with two websites, one all about heart health and another all about diabetes. And so today's topic is all about insulin resistance. And so this is a topic that's coming up a lot more because it does have a lot of connections with conditions like diabetes, potentially cardiovascular disease as well, which Michelle will be talking about today. And we are joined with Michelle Routhenstein, who is the owner of Entirely Nourished, which is a nutrition counseling and consulting private practice specializing in the prevention and management of heart disease. And she is a registered dietitian nutritionist who takes a science-based, personalized approach to improve heart function and address cardiometabolic risk factors to help increase the quality of life and reduce the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular complications. So she's a really great expert on heart health, and we're excited to be talking with her today. Hello, Michelle.
Hi. Good.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So we are, as introduced, today's topic is the impact of nutrition on insulin resistance. And we know that you've talked about this topic a few times on your channels. So we're really curious to get your insights from this as well. So I think just to start, we're just curious about, what is insulin resistance? So what does our body normally do when with our blood sugar levels and insulin levels, and what does insulin resistance do in contrast to that?
Yeah. So I'm really excited to bring this topic up because I feel like there's so much talk about insulin resistance, and the nutrition around it is actually very off-putting in terms of what the science says. So I'm excited to debunk a bunch of myths tonight, but also to correlate it with cardiovascular disease, because a lot of times people are looking at all their disease states in silos. And we know that there is a really, really strong connection between insulin resistance and heart disease. So to give you an understanding, what is insulin resistance? So when your cells don't respond well to insulin, so glucose can't go into the cell, your pancreas is going to overpump insulin to try to get the glucose into the cell where it belongs. But your cells are insulin resistant, so it's not allowing for the cell to open up and put blood sugar into it. And we need glucose as our primary energy fuel. So in the beginning, even up to 10 years, your body may not have high blood sugar levels because your pancreas is overworking. It's pumping out insulin to bring the blood sugar into the cell. But it's causing a lot of what I call chaos in the arteries during that time period, which is increasing your cardiometabolic risk factors. So when someone's insulin resistance, their body is not utilizing insulin effectively. So their pancreas is overworking to add more insulin into the bloodstream to help shuffle glucose into the cell. And then when it simply can't do that anymore, what ends up happening is that's when blood sugar levels start to rise. So someone may say, my hemoglobin A1C is normal. My blood sugar levels are normal, so I can't be insulin resistant. But insulin resistance can happen decades before blood sugars rise because your body's resilient. It wants to do what it has to do. And when it can't do it anymore, that's when blood sugars start rising. So when someone has prediabetes or diabetes, they have also insulin resistance, but individuals can also have insulin resistance even before glucose starts rising on a blood test.
Is someone insulin resistance necessarily on the track to diabetes, or how do they know?
Right. So insulin resistance does put you at increased risk for diabetes. And when we look at all cardiometabolic risk factors, so when you're trying to reduce your risk of a heart attack and stroke, you're really looking at cardiometabolic health. And so you want to address insulin resistance as part of this. And a lot of times you'll see practitioners only focusing on the lipid panel or only focusing on the blood sugar panel. They're all connected. And we need to be understanding that any diet that you go on should be really assessing and addressing addressing all of these
Mm-hmm.
cardiometabolic metrics in order for it to be truly heart healthy.
Mm. So what are these tests, if I want to, or if someone wants to know if they have insulin resistance, or if potentially if you're a clinician hoping to test your patients for it?
You can test for fasting insulin levels, and you can also do a HOMA-IR or LPIR test, which
Mm-hmm.
gives you a score for insulin resistance as well.
Mm. And what are some symptoms of insulin resistance that I might be able to cue into before doing these tests?
Yeah, so insulin resistance is different than the extreme high levels of high blood sugar levels when
Mm-hmm.
someone finds out diabetic. So insulin resistance can actually go asymptomatic. You may not have any symptoms, or you may chalk it up to something else. So if you're very fatigued a lot, if you have stubborn weight loss, and no matter
Mm-hmm.
what you do, it's not coming down, that a lot of times could be insulin resistance. High triglycerides, fatty liver disease, elevated liver enzymes, those are all cues that insulin resistance could be brewing. High uric acid levels. There's a lot of signs that we can tell if someone is insulin resistant, and we want to make sure that we are addressing it because it's correlated with high blood pressure, abnormal lipids, so diabetic dyslipidemia. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many things that insulin resistance is a component of because, again, we're talking about your cardiometabolic health. So if we don't address insulin resistance as part of that picture, it's still going to pump more insulin, which increases free fatty acids into the blood vessels, which cause havoc. And when you have havoc in the blood vessels, that LDL and all of the things that are there can cause more plaque in the arteries. And we need to really hone into that because if someone is insulin resistant, their risk of cardiovascular disease is increased. And we can address this, and we should address this through nutrition in order to combat it.
Mm. Yeah, and we'll get into that in just a second. Just curious about what are some risk factors for those who to gaining insulin resistance? Like, so what should people look out for if they already have some certain conditions?
So, if you have high blood pressure, that's
Mm-hmm.
connected to insulin resistance. If you have high cholesterol, it could be also. If you have abdominal weight, so if you carry your weight around your abdominal region, so this isn't your pant size, this is your belly button. If you
Mm-hmm.
take one thing away from my class, if you're a clinician, please check all of your clients on their waist circumference. Get one of those soft measuring tapes and measure them every time they come into the office. If you're a patient, and even do this on yourself if you're a clinician, because you're also a person that needs to take care of your cardiometabolic health, I want you to get a soft measuring tape. Don't suck in, don't suck out, and just put those two together. We really need to be addressing abdominal adiposity and that visceral fat because it's most cardiometabolically active. And so that's pumping out these pro-inflammatory proteins, which also increase the risk of insulin resistance. And we need to address that. So in the general population, you're looking for that waist circumference around the belly button to be less than 40 inches in a male, less than 35 inches in a female. And if you are certain ethnicities like South Asians, you want that actually 2 inches less. So we're really looking at addressing that metabolically active visceral fat because that's a big component when it comes to your cardiovascular health, your insulin resistance, and really addressing all of it.
Yeah, that's a good thing to know as clinicians, especially those who are watching. It seems like actually some of the people that are watching actually have insulin resistance. So that's great because now want to get into how do we address insulin resistance? If you know that you have it or are maybe believing that you have it and want to try some changes in your nutrition to address it, what can be done? What are I guess the key changes to your nutrition can you do to address it and increase your insulin sensitivity?
So I think the first thing that needs to be said is we need to really debunk an important myth. A lot of times people are like, ooh, I know I have insulin resistance because I crave sugar, or when I have sugar, I can feel myself crash. So they get rid of all carbs. There's a different gamut of carbohydrates that people need to recognize. You getting rid of all carbs, which also include the complex healthy carbs, is not addressing insulin resistance. It's telling your body, I'm going to remove the thing that increases insulin. So now you don't have to work so hard. So then when you add it back in, your body's like, what's this? I don't know what's going on. You're kind of putting a band-aid on the problem. What you need to be really focusing in on is what types of carbs are you consuming? What's the glycemic index of those carbohydrates? And then understanding that it needs to be paired appropriately too. What other things are you eating with it? You need to have lean protein and healthy fats, and you need to be having this in a well-balanced way and in the right portions for your body to break it down, digest it, put it in the cells where it belongs, and then you refuel it every 3 to 4 hours within an early time window. And I think it's important for people to realize that you getting rid of all the carbs can actually increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. We know the benefits of having carbs in our diet from an aspect of preventing progression of coronary artery calcification. And so we need to understand that it's not elimination, it's how much are we having, in what pairing, at what time of day, to allow our body to utilize it most effectively. The other thing that's important to recognize is when you eliminate carbs, a lot of times you eliminate the things that strengthen the insulin signal to do its job. So for instance, chromium, a lot of foods that are rich in chromium, which helps to strengthen the insulin signal, is in carbs. So hey, if you're going to eliminate your fruit, your vegetables, and your whole grains, you're going to eliminate the necessary components that will actually help lower your blood sugar level and help with releasing enough insulin and making your cells sensitive to open up the cell, allow blood sugar to go in, and for it to go where it belongs, so it's not causing havoc in the arteries.
Yeah, no, and I know you talk about this a lot on your page too, but I think any subtractive diets tend to, don't do well for your body. And also, it's hard to maintain too, just like cutting out a whole food group when your whole body needs all of the different parts to really function properly.
Well, it's a macronutrient, and it's called a macronutrient because you need a good volume of it in your day. I'm not saying to go on a high carb diet. I'm saying to go carb controlled diet where you're pairing it effectively and you're not eliminating it, but you're being intentional of where it is, which one it is, and how your body is responding to it.
So I guess just in simple terms, like what are some of these carbs that we should be focusing on controlling?
So look at it this way. Nobody's telling anyone to go on a high sugar diet. No one's telling anyone to go on a high white rice, candy, soda, sweets diet. Yes, that's going to raise your blood sugar. And why does it raise your blood sugar? Because there's no buffer. If you have insulin resistance and you're having a lot of sugar, simple carbs. So let's say you're having, I don't know, a donut or a bagel alone with butter for breakfast. What ends up happening is your blood sugars rise, and it's the carbs are so simple and so available in the body. Blood sugar rises, and your body struggles to put the glucose into the cell because the rise is too rapid. The blood sugar is going up, and so then you have the crash because your body's like, okay, I need to pump out more insulin. I need to get this where it needs to go. That's going to cause more insulin resistance. Now, if you chose, and just because we talked about bagels, but you chose, for instance, whole wheat bread, and you added to it, I don't know, a veggie egg white omelet or something like that with avocado, you now have a buffer of protein, healthy fat, and non-starchy vegetables that instead of your blood sugar going up and then crashing, you have a steady release of blood sugar. So your body's like, okay, the digestion's slower. I'm fuller. You're giving me 3 to 4 hours to digest this. I can put the blood sugar in my cell. I can put it where it belongs. I can metabolize the food, digest it, utilize these nutrients. And then when I'm hungry again, I'll let you know. And that's how you're supposed to eat. When we go on these crashes and we go up and down, our bodies are overworking. And after a while, it just can't do its job anymore. And that's when it starts starts leading into prediabetes and diabetes. So we want to help your body metabolize it. And I think this is a big component that's just not talked about when we talk about food. There's a our bodies are made in a certain way of how it digests our food and how we're supposed to eat. We're not supposed to eat and graze all day long. That will pump up your insulin levels. But we're not supposed to fast all day long because we need nourishment. And so we need to be eating more consistently and eating it in the right pairing and balance for optimal utilization of all the components that we need. And, you know, this comes to say also that when we address insulin resistance, we're also helping with really everything. You're not overwhelming your body or oversaturating it with things that will impede liver function, kidney function. All of these organs work in tandem together. So when you are eating in a heart healthy way, you're addressing optimal blood flow and optimal vascular health so that we're addressing blood pressure at the same time we're addressing cholesterol, at the same time we're addressing blood sugar levels.
Yeah, that's great. And I think definitely something that all people can take away. Just need to make sure that we're staying balanced with everything. And also too, just for a note, Michelle has done some great talks for us already on the Cardiovisual platform of talking about, I mean, one, just some of the fad diets to avoid, and then also just how to eat with our heart health in mind. Because I mean, they are just so linked in so many ways. You got to make sure that we are nourishing our bodies to be able to work effectively. I mean, I'm curious about, I mean, you were saying just eating at the right times of the day. Is that just what you were saying with making sure that we're not fasting during the day or eating the whole time of the day?
Yeah, so I mean, there's this big fad about intermittent fasting, but intermittent fasting can really mean so many different things, right? I've had a client come to me and they're like, yeah, intermittent fast, and they only eat in a 2-hour window. Well, you can't get all of your nutrients in a 2-hour window, even if you eat the most perfect meal. There's no way that your body can get 100% of its calcium, folate, magnesium, manganese, you name it. There's no way you can get that in a 2-hour meal. That's not how our bodies can digest and utilize nutrients. But think about it in a different way. If you're only eating in 2 hours, or let's say you're eating in 4 hours, and you take that first bite after you've fasted for 20 hours, you're starving. Your body is also like, WTF, why didn't you feed me? Okay,
Yeah.
so you know what your body does? It goes into a famine state, and it goes, I'm not telling you when I'm full because you didn't actually answer when I was hungry. So you eat and eat and eat and eat, and you're grazing, you're kind of not satisfied, you're kind of gorging in that 4-hour window. Well, guess what? Your body can't digest anything like that. So what happens? Triglycerides rise, sign of insulin resistance too. Your blood sugar rises, insulin rises, blood pressure, everything's rising because your body's like, you just gave me all this food and I have to figure out how to digest it, put it into the cell where it belongs, and it can't. So it wreaks havoc in the bloodstream. So it's important that we acknowledge that we can't just have these big meals. And I'm not saying I don't want you grazing all day, but if you have balanced meals, you should be hungry every 3 to 4 hours. So you're having about 3 meals and maybe a snack, depending on the hour of window that you're eating. We also know that from a research perspective, the later you eat, the higher your risk of cardiovascular disease. You have fasted, hopefully because you've been sleeping. You should be eating and jumpstarting your metabolism within an hour of waking up. And I think a lot of people have kind of been told, oh, do this fad, do that fad, do this trendy thing, and they're not being in tune with what their body actually needs. So it's important that we're starting off our day with a good meal too. And, I would just add, because I think there's so much information out there on the internet, like really understanding why and what's going on in your body is paramount to your success. Because I've had people come to me with the wackiest things that they've seen online. And I'm like, I'm just curious, like, what's the logic behind that? And they literally don't have an answer. I had someone look at me and go, oh, I don't eat. I was like, oh, do you eat oats? And they're like, oh, I don't eat oats. No, I can't eat oats. I was like, oh, what happened? I'm like, you don't feel good when you have oats? She's like, no, an influencer told me that goats eat oatmeal. I literally was like,
Mm.
that's not an answer. I want you to take an objective response to understanding, well, why is this healthy for me? Why isn't it healthy for me? What is it doing in my body? And I think that's a big part too. And then tying this into insulin resistance, so many people are getting CGMs, but they're not being
Mm.
followed by a dietitian. So they're going on a continuous glucose monitor. They eat a carb and they're like, my blood sugar went up. Yeah, your blood sugar is supposed to go up when you eat a
Yeah.
carb. They don't know how to read it, and they don't know how to
Mm.
pair the foods to make it so that after an hour, 2 hours of eating, their blood sugar is in an optimal range. And so then people start fearing carbs. So the CGM can be really helpful tool if you know how to read it and interpret it. So I always really want to stress that fact that if that's something that you are doing, please work with a certified diabetes educator and a registered dietitian who can educate you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a certified diabetes educator because of the link between cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And it's really important that people really understand that this is a very connected field and it's all within cardiometabolic health. And if you really want to reduce your risk of complications from diabetes and insulin resistance, you have to take care of your heart because it is paramount to prevent the complications in diabetes. I think that's not stressed enough. People are just looking at one number versus looking at all of the numbers that should
Mm-hmm.
be in the optimal range.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, it's hard to navigate by yourself, especially if you haven't studied this before. So it is important to be in contact with people who have researched this and know which numbers to be looking for, how to help coach you along in your journey. Because also too, I mean, everyone's just individualized, so like you have to take each person and their overall health together to be able to fully evaluate them, rather than just taking a generic thing that someone sees online that may not apply to everyone and may not always be factually correct.
But I think Right. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
also stresses the point that we're all different. And if there was
Mm-hmm.
one diet that everyone could go on to get optimal cardiometabolic health, 90% of Americans wouldn't be cardiometabolically unhealthy. But
Mm-hmm.
what's really important and what I see most successful in my private practice is really taking the science and merging it into someone else's lifestyle. Because
Mm-hmm.
what you do for a month will not impact your heart health or your diabetes risk. What you do for the rest of your life, what will impact your longevity, your aging gracefully and functionally, and it will also impact your cardiovascular well-being and reduction in chronic disease. So I think it's a big important thing for those listening to avoid fad diets, avoid trying these magic pills. There's no such thing. It's really about creating a lifelong lifestyle plan that works with you and your culture and your food preferences and your cooking style, and really making it enjoyable, delicious, and something you can maintain for the rest of your life, because that's the most important thing. Like, I have people who go on such extreme restrictive diets before they come to see me, and they're always focusing on, oh, I remove this, I remove that, I don't have oils, I don't have this. And I'm like, but are you happy? Like, you
Yeah.
can't go out to restaurants, you can't enjoy like social occasions, like you're not, like your mood is down. Like, when we talk about heart health and heart healthy living, there's definitely a big component of science of getting adequacy of nutrients. That's definitely a big component. But the other part is quality of life and reduction of health anxiety with knowing what's going to benefit you and understanding the why behind it and building that confidence so that you can apply it to any nutrition environment that you're in, and know that you don't ever have to be perfect on a diet for it to be successful. I see individuals do 60% of what I teach, and beautiful labs. I see individuals do 90% and get off most of their medications. Everybody's different
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how it's being approached and how the body is responding to it. But science-based nutrition needs to be a component of really everybody's health to prevent chronic disease.
Mm. Yeah, I think those are all just great points, because I think everyone just kind of gets caught up in the idea of fad diets or just all these things that they could be doing to improve their health, but it's just not sustainable. And if people want to, whatever their goals are, to lose weight, to just improve their cholesterol levels, if you're wanting to do that, it has to be something that you can maintain, because it's not going to be helpful if it helps you for a month and then just goes back to how it was after that.
But the fad dieting also can really cause a lot of changes in your
Mm-hmm.
metabolism. And it could actually, if you go on a fad diet that you lose more than, 2, 3 pounds a week, that can scar your liver. That can cause a gout attack. That can cause muscle loss. So we have to understand that there are actual dangers to doing a lot of these things. It's the same thing with supplements. So many people find out that they have a diagnosis and then they Google supplements and that diagnosis. And the marketing for those supplements are right there for you. They're going to come and they're going to try to alert you. Who doesn't want to believe that, right? Like magic pills are so enticing and it's hard not to. But there's a lot of studies that show that there's at least a big group of supplements that actually just came in JAMA showing that many of these cause liver damage. Many of these cause kidney damage. These had a lot of lead, arsenic, and some of them even were found, some of the remnants were found in plaque. So we need to be careful. Like the supplements are not a natural product in the way we think of it, just because it's called a vitamin or just because it's called a supplement. And I really, really stress the importance of working with your healthcare team, including your registered dietitian, to really sort through these things, because it's so paramount to your health and it needs to be individualized. Some supplements can be helpful if you avoid certain food categories, if you're taking certain medications that deplete certain nutrients, but this needs to be looked at a personal basis. There is not one supplement that everybody needs to take, no matter if you have insulin resistance, you have cardiovascular disease. There's no one supplement that I would recommend everybody in this that's watching that they should take. It needs to be individualized. And that's a really important thing when you're looking at benefits versus risks. Almost look at it as, would you go on a drug prescribed by your doctor if they didn't evaluate your risks versus benefits and the need for it? No. The supplement industry is regulated, but not very regulated. And so they only pull a product when someone has a adverse event from it. And a lot of times it's hard to pinpoint that was what caused it. So be careful. That's really a big message. Like, make sure you're getting sound advice and you're having a personalized approach so that this is helping you versus causing any potential harm.
That's great. And I think that's a great note to end on. Just making sure that any changes that we are making to our diet, our health, should be also taken into account with healthcare professionals who can help guide us through that journey. Making sure that we're not taking any drastic measures without actually having sound research and science behind it, not getting caught up in just what's out there on social media. And then also too, going back to our original points too, just with insulin resistance and having a heart healthy diet, making sure that we are including everything. We're not taking away any parts of any nutrients that we need. And Michelle, I guess any other points that you want to close with, making sure for the viewers?
Yeah, I always say you can prevent so much if you take a proactive approach in your care. A lot of times we wait for, a lot of people will say, oh, the doctor didn't tell me this. And I'm like, yeah, because this is a prevention model. And a lot of times doctors I've worked with brilliant doctors and I love what they do, but they're trained in treatment. They're trained in medical management. So in order for you to take a preventative approach, you need to be proactive in your care. You need to be asking the right questions. You need to be getting the right tests. You need to be monitoring your metrics, because a lot of this cardiometabolic disease brews silently until something comes up and you're like shocked that happened. And there were signs along the way if you just took that empowered approach and really took action. So I encourage everyone watching this to really be your own advocate for yourself. Make sure that you are getting your blood tested. You're looking at trends to assess where things are going. You're asking the right questions. You're understanding your situation, and you're taking a very proactive, heart healthy nutrition and lifestyle approach to optimize your health.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for all of your insights. And to everyone watching, make sure to check her out at her Facebook page is right here, Entirely Nourished, but also check out her website, and also check out some of her videos on the cardiovisual page on either our website, heart.medicalvisual.com, or on our YouTube, where we have some other talks with you. This has been great. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Yes, and hope this helps everyone out there. And we'll stay tuned for our next live event.
Sounds good.